Okay, so next few minutes we are going to talk about some of the very important concepts, and I wanted to make sure that you please focus on this because this is the foundational of Claude, how Claude works. So a few minutes ago, if you guys recall, we started with an empty folder. We give Claude a prompt. This is our prompt, create a modern developer learning hub, and somehow we ended up with an working application. Now let's spend a few minutes understanding what actually happened. Because if you are anything like me, the first time you see Claude working, it almost feels like magic. But it's not magic. It's actually a series of simple concepts working together. And once you understand these concepts, everything else in the Claude code becomes much easier to understand. Before we talk about the Claude, we need to quickly talk about terminal. Think of the terminal as a text-based control panel for your machine. Through the terminal, we can access file, we can run the programs, we can install software, right? For example, if I go in terminal here and I'm in that in our the project folder, and if I simply type dir, it is going to list down all the files. If I use mkdir, I will be able to create the folder. Now let's connect that idea to Claude code. Earlier we watched Claude create files, right? I mean, if when we issued the commands, the Claude was able to create all these files. It created all these folders, right? It was able to run commands. It was able to build, the folders and generate this entire application. The reason Claude can do, because Claude has access to all these tools. If you see here, the files, terminal, browser, Git, all these tools, it has got access. Now let's understand this whole tool calling, okay, how it works. So what actually happens when you give Claude a request? Let's say we ask Claude to build a learning platform, okay, the way we did. Claude doesn't immediately start writing code. First, it understands the request here, okay. Then it thinks about what needs to be happen, what are the different steps it has to do. Then it chooses the right tool and it uses that tool, it reviews the result, okay, and then it decides what to do next, and that's called the tool calling, okay. And you watched it happen earlier while Claude was building our application. Now let's switch to here. There is another interesting thing Claude does, and that is called the agentic loop, okay. So Claude doesn't usually solve problem in a single step. Usually it works in cycles. It plans, it acts, it observes, it adjusts until and unless it is not able to finish the entire task. So that is what it is called agentic loop. Now let's move it here and try to understand the permission model. Now just because Claude wants to do something doesn't mean it automatically can, okay? So Claude operates behind a permission model. So when Claude wants to read the file, edit the file, run commands, or perform certain actions, it may ask for your approval. So if you folks noticed it, when we were developing it, it asked many times, can you provide the access to go ahead, read this folder, etc., etc. So that is called the permission model. This is super important. This is up to you that when Claude asks permission, what you are going to allow and what you are going to deny. Now let's try to understand this last one, that if Claude is so powerful, why sometimes Claude or any other coding agents, why they fail? And there could be, couple of reasons, right? Because nobody is perfect, neither the coding agent is perfect. Sometimes these agents fail. Sometimes results are not what we expected. Sometimes Claude get confused. And surprisingly, it's often not because the model is bad. The most common reasons are, the bad instructions. the missing context, wrong tool, and then it can be permission issues. Okay, so it is very important that what the better inputs we are providing it. Now let's try to recap. We use the terminal to interact with our machine. Claude uses tools to get work done. Claude works through the tools calling. Okay, permission keep us in control, and better context usually leads to better results. Now, what brings us to one of the most important concept in cloud code: context. Because the quality of the context you provide often determines the quality of the results you get. And that's exactly what we are going to talk next.